Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with Monica Livingston from 36 Nation. Monica is another one of the absolutely amazing people that I have had been blessed to meet through Positive Coaching Alliance. So, Monica, thanks for taking the time to join me on the podcast today.
Of course, Dan. I'm happy to be here. I love how you explain this podcast and what it's going to be about. I'm so excited, and I'm going to be listening way past just my episode. Right?
Awesome. So first of all, tell us a little bit about Monica and 36 Nation.
Okay, let's see. I am born and raised in Prince George's County, Maryland. Went to high school there, played basketball, played volleyball, played softball for 2 days. It was really hot out there, so it wasn't for me. And I wasn't that good at it, so they put me way out in the outfield. And there was nothing out in the outfield back in the day in girls softball except me and the bees that were, on the little flowers and dandelions out there. So it wasn't for me. So I didn't have a stellar softball career, but I did play basketball in high school, in college. And then after that, I was like, wow, I still would like to play basketball, but you guys, your audience can't see. I'm a little vertical because I'm sitting down, I'm a little vertically challenged. So, WNBA wasn't yet, and I'm dating myself as well. And it wasn't going to work out for me to play professionally. So I knew I wanted to still be competitive. I got involved with flag football downfield blocking, 11 on 11 competitive flag football. And then after that, I was recruited off of that field to play for the DC Divas, which is a women's professional tackle football team here in DC, the winningest team in that sport. For women, we have compiled more W's than any other women's football team. And that's just a fact. There are other good ones out there. I'm just going to tell you the facts, Dan. We're that good for that long. And so had a tremendous career there, and on and off the field. I had success on the field. I was a running back. Career ended a little short because I had a devastating ankle injury. They literally compared my ankle injury to Joe Theismann's injury. My ankle turned around. It was upside down, backwards, hanging towards me. I'm on my back, and instead of this way, it was this way. And I thought, wow, what am I going to do now? Because this team had been so much a part of my family for years. And I thought, well, now I'm really done playing. And what do athletes do when they're really done playing? And that led me into some of the stuff that I do, now. And so that's the athletic part or intro of Monica. Career-wise, what I was doing at that same time, simultaneously to playing these sports, was going to college, and then after that, working. And I became a athletic director, coach, and health teacher, PE teacher. That traditional route that you take, and did well there and loved it, but wasn't challenged. I was at a small private Christian high school, and to be very frank, the kids bored me to death. I asked them to sit down, they'd sit down. I asked them to raise their hand, they'd raise their hand. I was like, man, somebody's going to nod off in here, and it's probably going to be me, right? I'm just like, so I literally remember a substitute. I was at this camp, a substitute teacher coming, and she was like, oh my gosh, these kids are so refreshing. And I was like, oh, where are you? And she told me about this school that was they called them level 5 schools then, a special ed school where the kids had been in jail and trouble. And we're standing there watching these other kids play. It was like we had recess duty or something. And she just kept going on and on about how she was going to quit there and were there any openings where I was. And as we're talking, I thought, there isn't, but there's about to be one, right? So I literally, hand to God, Dan, that next day, called the school that she wanted to get out of, demanded an interview. I mean, when I look back, it was really ballsy. I don't know who I thought I was at the time. Demanded an interview and went and told them, hey, I don't know what I can do here. They didn't have a job, created a job as a crisis counselor. I came back the next day, told the chick that loved these little goody two-shoe kids. We literally did a flip-flop and the rest was history. I have been in special education or dealing with difficult populations since then and loved it. And I've done everything from have a walkie-talkie go off and chase kids, and we did restraints back then, some stuff that, therapeutically I'm not proud of now, but that was the way, then, as long as kids weren't harming themselves or someone else, we would physically intervene. And I think there are better ways to do that now, certainly safer ways to do that now than we used to go in like, like, bam, it was like WWE, but there are better holds and things you can do. So that was my career, what I've been doing. And then organically what happened in that education realm was people started saying, hey, can you come talk about classroom management with these teachers? Can you talk about ADHD? Because I have it. With this group. And so then I got comfortable and people seemed to like me standing around talking to them. And I thought, wow, I wonder if this is, if I could snap my fingers and do anything, this is what I would want to do all the time, is just be around people, whether that's one-on-one, when I'm talking to one person or 500 people. That is what I like doing, just exchanging dialogue and information with people. And lo and behold, found Positive Coaching Alliance, as you know, and was doing my own thing also. And here I am now, completely out of education in terms of I'm no longer running a school or, providing direct services to a school, but I have a couple that are clients still. So 3-6 Nation is my own brainchild. The 3-6 was my jersey number when I was playing football. And the Nation is about just bringing together a collective group of people that have similar beliefs, like-mindedness, where we get together and we want to make the world a better place and share dialogue and information and be better humans. And so that's been the journey. That's how I got to where I was, and I'm still here fighting and always growing and trying to figure out what's next,
That's awesome. I love the story. And I think that's kind of a great segue into, really the nuts and bolts of what we wanted to talk about today, in this podcast and, some of the recent podcasts I've done is really just starting the dialogue about race, and starting the dialogue about, what can we do to make people focus more on the things we have in common as opposed to the things that we have different.
Yeah.
And, I think that's, awesome the way you've grown, 3-6 Nation and have, gotten to that point and founded it on getting people together. And, obviously right now in our country, there's a lot of tension, and there's groups of people that are together.
Right.
But we're certainly not all together as a country. So, what do you think is, everybody knows the problems,
Right.
So what are some of the solutions that, us little people, us common, moms and dads and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles can do, without needing a bill passed or anything like this, to the very grassroots, what can we do? And I know for me, it is to have these conversations, to talk about it, to figure out, what do we have in common and how do we move forward from here?
Yeah. So you're spot on. Some people get it and other people don't, but the main thing is people don't know what to do, right? The number one thing that we have to figure out, and I have some suggestions for it, but the number one thing that keeps anyone from changing or doing something, applying for a new job, the number one thing is fear. It's the thing that keeps everyone from moving forward. It's why people don't start businesses. It's why people don't public speak. It's fear. It's why you don't ask somebody out on a date. You're like, oh, they might say no. I don't know. It's fear. So we have to look at that and how to eliminate that. Otherwise, we're just going to keep, as we've been doing, repeating the same thing. And the fear, when we talk about racism, I think one of the main roots is not so much the belief of I'm better than you. I'm in here. Because most people with half a brain know that you can't just decide you are better than me because we have different pigment. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? That's crazy. So most people, but what they don't know is how they're going to be received, what to say, what they can't say. So again, that fear thing rises up to the top. So how do we eliminate fear? Practice. Just like in sports, right? You go to get up to bat, every athlete, we know this, is afraid of mistakes. That's the number one thing they're afraid of. Failure, mistakes, what people are going to say, how people are going to react. And the only way to get better at any skill is to keep doing it over and over again. That's hard work. Well, when we talk about racism, the hard work is this, the conversations. And we both have to be ready that I may say something, Dan, you might not like. You may say something that I may not like. But we're on the same team because you're the one that called me, reached out to me. So I know you're on my team. We may not have the same skill set on this team, but we got to work together so that we can win the championship, right? And
Right.
I think that's the thing, eliminating fear and having dialogue. People are segregated at lunchtime, and they're segregated on Sundays at church time, right? So one of the most segregated times that we as population decide that we're going to see color. And that's because we want to be comfortable in those two arenas, right? Whatever your spiritual beliefs are, and when you're eating, everybody's like, how many times, even with your own friends that look like you, how many times have you said, oh, don't bother me right now, I'm eating, right? The eating time, we want to chill. We don't want to educate. We want to get down and grub right then and there. So if we can also infiltrate those two times where I know when I'm eating with you, it's the same as if I'm eating with somebody that looks like me or somebody, because all we have to do is be like-minded. So we have to set up these. We have to set up these panels, these podcasts. We have to have people, when you're done, I've got to push your podcast on all my social media. You got to push yours so that two people that go, I don't know either one of them, but let me see, they listen to it, they tell two more people, and then maybe somebody is listening to us at lunchtime that are from different races. And so it starts to be contagious. I don't know why the fixing racism can't be as contagious as racism has been.
Yeah.
Why can't it be exactly the same? It's the conversation, it's the eliminating the fear. And it's the thought process behind everyone is no one has the answer. So we also have to stop saying, all you have to do is do this. We also have to realize that it's on both sides. And I'm going to call it for what it is, right? There are some Black people that are too angry right now to even want to talk to you, which is the same thing that we're asking people not to judge us on our skin color when we're walking down the street. People will make assumptions of you as a white dude with that beard, right?
Yep.
And that's not fair. And all you got to do is have a bandana in your back pocket and get out of a red pickup truck. And man, I'm like, wait a minute, Dan. Right? I thought we were cool, man. That all of a sudden we can put another name tag on you based on nothing you have said out of your mouth. Well, that's how Black people live all the time, right? And I really think it's about the fear. And so as soon as we can just keep eroding away at the fear, then you can educate. I was just having this conversation a minute ago. You can't change a person's mind that isn't listening. I can send all of the documentation. I was getting into it on Facebook with a friend of mine, and he is an ultra-conservative preacher now, and Trump supporter. And like you were saying before we started taping, we should have saved some of our good dialogue for this. But like you were saying, this has become a political issue, and it shouldn't, right? In your words, it should be a human issue.
Absolutely.
And I'm trying to get that out of him. Like, just say it's wrong how Black people are treated. I don't care about all lives matter right this second, right? I care about all lives, but not this second. And what I realized is I'm giving energy to him, and he's not ready to listen. So I was getting all worked up, and I was like in this space and in this mood. And then I thought, you know what? Let me go eat and let me get myself together, because I got Dan at 10 o'clock and he's listening and I'm listening to him. And so that brought a smile to my face, fixed my little eggs. And that's why I was so happy and smiling to see you. He can wait because he's got earmuffs on. So I'm not going to scream over top of his earmuffs. I'm worried because he has a lot of influence, and people are listening to him, but I'm going to just keep yelling and talking with not to, but with the people that are listening, like yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, because man, it can get frustrating when
Mhm.
you're talking to somebody and you're like, dude, you're just not getting this,
Right.
like you're just not getting this. And so I think being able to step back and say, okay, when they're ready to listen, I'll fight that battle on that.
Right.
But I'm not gonna keep grinding on this one
Yep.
today.
Yep.
And
You're right. You're
that's
the same space
important.
as me. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you talk about fear, one of the first blogs I did when Sandy and I decided we were going to jump in this RV and get moving is
I
uh,
smile every time you say that. I start laughing to myself. Like, for those of you who don't know, my boy is selling his house, and taking his wife and dog, and they're gonna live in an RV and travel the country. So,
yeah. So the first blog I did, I forget the exact title, but it was essentially, every journey starts with the first step, and it was talking about coming over that fear because again when I first brought this idea up to my wife, I mean, she thought like she's ready to call, all right, he's lost it, let's get him in the psychiatric unit,
right.
figure out what's going on. Then she started coming around, and I truly believe she's actually more anxious today right now to hop in that thing and get going than what I am. But it's also scary,
Yep.
it's scary to leave your family behind, and we've got roots in this area, and to sell everything and to go out there in the unknown. But to overcome that fear, you've got to do it.
Mhm.
And I think that's what this, overcoming the fear of asking that question, regardless of, even if it's the wrong question to start,
Right.
You're going to respect that person for asking the question, because
Yep.
it starts the dialogue and say, well, let me explain this to you. Like when someone will say to you, Monica, I don't understand this Black Lives Matter thing, because shouldn't it be that all lives matter?
Mhm.
And when you just break it down and say, you cannot say all lives matter until Black Lives Matter.
I love that.
You know?
And you're absolutely right. And that's if I put myself out there to be such a jerk, then people won't approach me, right, about it. And I think you were on the call, or maybe I told you the other day, I shared with you that someone that we both work with, I'm not going to call them out, but said to me, and I'm very good friends with this person, texted me privately and said, I won't ask this in the chat or out there, but I love all lives. Like, and how I feel about you. So that I mean you also. Why can't I say all lives matter? And I was thankful that our interactions have been so that she felt comfortable saying that. Because what happened was I was able to tell her, and then she went, oh, okay. Which means that's not the important part, which means now she went back and told the people at her table.
Right.
Then they told somebody, well, my friend said, or my friend said, and so then that's how we get the change. Instead of me being like, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, and then people being like, yeah, I ain't gonna ask her anything. So we get to watch it change. And I get the fear. Listen, I don't, if, in sports, I don't know any number one team that wants to be number two,
That's right.
right? So for some white people, for some, equal to the playing field is going to mean some losses,
Yes.
right? It's going to mean some losses. If all of a sudden we both go to the same job interview and it's based solely on that interview, some of y'all are not going to get the W like you used to get, right?
Fact.
So I get that's part of the fear too. And that is just human basic whatever, right? That I can get and understand and work through now. How about it's enough out here for everybody to have a number one spot? Like it really is. And if there's not, we can create that, because that's why the country is great, right? Because we have that. So I get that part of the fear of people not wanting to, like it feels like you've got to give up something in order for somebody else to make it. And we have to address that too, that people have to be reassured that me coming up doesn't mean you're going down.
Right. Without a doubt. And I think, I'll admit, years and years ago, when the Black Lives Matter first came out, I was one of those guys like, well, wait, shouldn't all lives matter? But
Me
again,
too.
you listen,
Too.
yeah, you listen, and if you think so, we're sports people. We're both rooted in sports. So an analogy for the listeners out there, all right, all lives matter is the end zone. All lives matter is the end zone. Black Lives Matter is the red zone. And you can't get to the end zone until you go through the red zone. And I think if we can kind of start to just
I love
break
that.
this down a little bit and try to put it in, places where people can understand it, that's what it is. We all want to get to the end zone.
Right.
We're not kicking 60-yard field goals. We got to get into the red zone.
I love that.
Have past it. And
you better hurry up and trademark that one then. I'll be using that later today, but I'll give you credit.
That's why you're the strategist, right?
I love that. Ooh, right. That gave me goosebumps.
So yeah, I mean, and it's taking that first step and having the conversation and putting yourself into rooms with people who don't look like you. And again, I've been fortunate enough throughout my life. I was raised by parents who didn't have any problem putting us in rooms with people that didn't look like us, and taught us to treat people as equals, and to not judge people until you can form an opinion.
Right.
And throughout the past couple of weeks, since this tragedy, it's kind of come to me, whereas like just being an ally of my friends who are minorities is no longer good enough.
Right.
And that's why I've decided, to do these series of podcasts, to become an advocate, to help raise that voice. And then like you said, when this thing hits the air and I push it out there to my circle, and you push it out there to your circle, and the others who I'm doing these podcasts with are pushing it out to their circles. We don't know where it'll go, but we're throwing that pebble into the pond and seeing where those ripples go. And hopefully with God's help, we're going to change some minds and start this grassroots things. Again, I think, again, we look at, they use the analogy of how do you eat an elephant, and it's one bite at a time, but we're so consumed on the entire elephant. Like this has to get to Congress, things have to change at the top. They do, but we can start changing things at the bottom first.
Right.
And
yeah.
The more of these little people like you and I that can push this forward, the easier it's going to get for those at the top to recognize that we need to make some, systemic changes. This is an issue. This is an issue, and we can't ignore it anymore. We can't brush it under the rug and just think, well, I love quoting MLK, and did they have their hands full with them in the 60s?
Right.
Thank God they did what they did at the 60s, because now Monica and I can sit in the same restaurant together and have lunch and drink at the same fountain. But man, we're not done.
Yeah.
We're just not done. He started it. We're not done. And we kind of sat, I don't want to say idle for, 50 years, but we were kind of in cruise control, thinking it was all going to just take care of itself since Dr. King did what he did. And
well, and that's the thing, right? Because publicly things look kind of equal and, and okay. We went to this place where before in the civil rights movement, black people were treated the same regardless, right? Can't sit here on the bus, can't go to this restaurant, can't stop by this town. We were treated the same, even regardless of who you were. And musicians had a little more leadway because you guys like our music, right? but we were treated the same. And then it looked, but now what happened after the 60s is there was no overt, you can't walk down the street and see somebody being lynched. There wasn't this overt racism. It got sneaky. The racism went underground. It was still working, but it wasn't that people weren't walking around in the street using the N-word just because you were pumping gas. And I have said this before, Dan, I will tell you this racist, this is what I'm more scared of. The dude in the with the hood on, I can deal with him all day. I see him coming. I know what his agenda is, right? We can either go for it and get it done, or I can go the other way. But I know him, right? It's the guy that I'm sitting next to at the ball game. We paid the same amount for these expensive seats. We were drinking the same thing. We like the same team, and he would rather I sit anywhere than next to him.
Yeah,
that's that. That's that silence. And what this is why I think I was sharing this with you. Why I think George Floyd was so different was because we went back to that public lynching. We watched that, and we got to see the entirety of it.
Yeah.
Right. We normally see clips of, and then you get to go in your mind, well, I wonder what he did first, or I wonder what happened, or he's a bad guy, all those other things. No matter what he did, we saw for 8 minutes, he didn't do nothing but die.
Yep.
Other people around that could have intervened, they could have got him in the car. And I think that's what's different. This made people go, oh, snap. This is, and I know so because people have said to me, I had no idea it was that bad. And a lot of us are like, welcome to the party, right? Like, yeah. And I'm sharing with you, I don't even have it as bad as some of my Black brothers and sisters, because I haven't, my experience has been different. My opportunities have been different than they had. And I love one thing that and I'll just go ahead and call this person out. Kelly Kratz said on our last call that she realized, I think this is so important, she realized that she had been raising her kids wrong. And what she meant by that is she had been raising them to be colorblind. And she said, and I think that, I shouldn't have done that. They need to see the color because there are also differences. There are differences, but not because Black people aren't smart enough, not because Black people are lazy. There are differences because of 400 years of slavery. There are differences because of systematic racism, right? That's why there are differences. So we also are asking for an extra level of empathy, and compassion surrounding that, because you're going to run into some guys that aren't going to be as ready to chit chat with you as I am, because they've been pulled over and beat 9 times. I've just been worried about it.
Right.
So it's going to be different. And so we have to accept all the differences as we move forward to fix this thing, But I think we can do it, though. I really do.
I agree. And as heartbreaking as it's been, and again, more so for your community than mine, let's just be honest about it. But there is definitely optimism in the air. And again, I think what you had just said about having to sit there and watch that video for almost 9 minutes. I know for me, when you and I were talking about that, when I asked you, which you just gave the answer for, when I had asked you on the phone the other day, what do you think is different about this time? And again, I said for me, and unfortunately, as crass as it sounds, it's almost as though, unfortunately, these other young Black men who we saw the video of them getting gunned down in the street with their hands up or whatever, it was almost like it was just too fast for us to digest, And here, like, you had to sit and watch this. And it took me a couple times to watch that video to get through the whole thing because it was uncomfortable. And I'd say to myself, I can't watch this. And then I'd see somebody post something on social media, that was literally saying, if you have refused to watch this video because it makes you uncomfortable, you're part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because my privilege that most white people don't want to acknowledge is I could turn away and I could have clicked stop and never go back and watch it.
Right.
You guys can't because you live it every day.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. And I think that's one of the other things I want to touch on again, briefly here is, again, the term white privilege and how misunderstood that is. I've got friends that I'll bring that up, and they're like, man, I've worked for everything I've got. And it's like, white privilege does not mean that you are filthy rich and wealthy and had everything handed on to you.
Right.
White privilege means that you can walk into a room and your voice be heard.
Yes.
Period.
You get it.
Period. And you go back to the sports analogy, and I, talking about Kelly Kratz, her and I talked on the phone the other day, and I mentioned this. I said, if you want to try to break this down for kids, to make them understand, because I really do think that's where we start changing this, is with the younger generation, because they're still moldable. All the 50-year-old white guys like me aren't still moldable.
Right.
So if you break it down and say, look, we're gonna split this group into 2 teams, and this team here, every time you score a touchdown, you get 10 points on the board. And this team, every time you score a touchdown, you're going to get 3 points on the board. So which team you want to be on?
Yep.
And you and I just talked about, we want to win.
Absolutely.
I'm going on that team that's putting 10 points.
Me too. Right.
We have the choice, but we don't have that choice. And I think that's where, again, we really got to break this down. It's almost like, the book Racism for Dummies, like that's
right. You're right.
Because it's just been something that's so ingrained in our society, that, and again, it's not, the other thing is, it's not white people's fault for, how do I want to word this, for not knowing. It's your fault if you continue to not know, though.
Oh yeah.
There's enough out there now.
Yeah, we know better, you do better. And nobody can hide now. You can say before, but and I think that's why it's going to be so much change, though, because more people are listening now than ever before.
Absolutely.
So we have a broader audience of people that are listening and willing to be like, I'm sorry I got to the party late, but I'm here now and I'm ready to turn up and dance with you. And we've been saying, man, we've been inviting you to this party, but I don't care about that anymore. You finally are at the party.
You're here.
We about to party. It's about to be lit. Okay, right. Yep. And I love your definition of white privilege, because I run into that all the time. People that say I wasn't given anything. And some of it is you don't even know what you were given, because you just assumed that it was just on you just being fantastic. You don't know the passes that you actually were given. And there's a checklist, right, that I've asked some of my friends. Have you ever been followed at a store? You ever been pulled over just because you were driving? Not a tail light, not because you were speeding, not a swerve, but just because you were driving, and then tag on a nice car. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever been somewhere with your with 2 white friends, and they come over at the table, the waiter comes and says, are you paying together or splitting the bill? Like, that happens all the time. Little thing. I've been out with people, white people, and I have been looked over in terms of getting waited on. And I know that they're sitting down at the next table. We wanted to occupy a story. We wanted to occupy both tables. So my friend went over and sat over there later than I did. I sat down first. I'm like, where are you? Hurry up, get here to save this table. Save this table. We need it because we got more people coming. We're going to watch the game. I'm coming. I'm putting water over there and my keys and she walks in, sits down at that table. I've been sitting at my table, been sitting. They come right over, ma'am, what can I get you? I'm like, I'm sitting here, Now, was that overlooked? See, this is the thing. It could be, but when it happens the 5th time at different restaurants, you start to understand that what's ingrained in people's mind is that, or at least feel, we'll say this, is I don't matter as much. I don't matter as much. So that's the privilege. You get to walk in and be seated first, even when you don't get there first.
Yeah, or even, and again, obviously I can't speak for this particular server, but probably the thought in their mind that Monica's not going to be as good of a tipper.
I know where you're going. Yep. Economics went into it. Yep. They saw her and they were like, let me get her happy Let me get her happy first, because she not gonna, whatever. Which is so funny you said that, Dan, because I have a thing about tipping. I'm on the road so much because of that. I am an over tipper, and I'm gonna reevaluate that, because I was doing it so that white people that were waiting on me could feel differently about my race. And I need to think about that, because a lot of times they didn't deserve the over tip.
Right.
So what I was basically doing, without even knowing, I'm working through this with you right here, I hadn't planned on saying this, is that I was rewarding their bad behavior. So they just treated me any kind of way and got more money than maybe you would have tipped them, right? I leave 25% at a minimum every time, anytime I go somewhere. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I want them to see me out here in the world, traveling as a business differently than what they, had in their mind ahead of time. And I'm thinking now, when they suck, maybe my tip will suck.
Yeah. No, I don't agree with that. I don't disagree with that for sure. So, but yeah, I mean, there's so many different layers to this onion, and we're just about out of time here, and there's so much more we can talk about. And
I know we could do this for 4 hours, but I don't know if
sure,
anybody would listen.
I'm sure I'm gonna probably have you back on. So
hey,
don't be afraid of that. But
only in the RV though. I'm not gonna do this again. I want the RV.
Next time we'll do it will be you and I both sitting in the RV in front of your house.
Okay, listen. I hope you're serious about that. I am a sucker for an RV. I love them. I don't know what it is about them. Ever since I was a little kid, I just thought a house on wheels that you could take somewhere is just amazing. RVs and houseboats, I love them. So that's a done deal. Okay.
All right, we will definitely do it. So let's hope these people coming on Friday put that offer in, and we can get on the road and do that sooner as opposed to later. So, like I was telling you at the beginning, the subtitle of this podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places, which is derived from a song by a guy by the name of Michael Franti. The song's Gloria. The opening lines are, when many little people in many little places do many little things, then the whole world changes. So I always like to ask my guests, and I mean, you already answered this question throughout the entire podcast, but in your mind, what is one of those specific things that Monica's doing to make the world a better place?
I'm going to keep having conversations with people that don't look like me.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So, Monica, I really appreciate the time. Look forward to meeting you in person. And again, it's funny the way this podcast is, evolved. We started this new journey, and then all of a sudden COVID jumps in and the journey's at a halt, and I got to reinvent. I never did a podcast over Zoom prior to COVID. So if there's a blessing from COVID, it's that, I figured out some technology, and, Sandy and I now have a checklist of people we need to see in DC and Tampa and Dallas and all over the place. So it's kind of neat the way it's all working out. And I said, hopefully, some people listen to this and put themselves in rooms with people that don't look like them and start the conversation, regardless of how fearful they are about it or how uncomfortable about it. You're never going to hit a home run if you don't swing the bat. So even if your first conversation's a foul tip, you made contact and you're still in the game at that point. So for everybody out there listening, just reach out and have the conversation with someone that doesn't look like you. Get their perspective and go into it with an open mind and really wanting to learn. I think that's the main thing that we're really trying to push here with the number of podcasts I'm trying to do with people that don't look like me, So exactly. Thank you for stepping up and helping me out with this one. And again, I look forward to having Monica as a pretty regular guest on this podcast. So I'll put your website and everything. I mean, actually, give yourself a little shout out. If somebody wants to reach out to Monica for whether it's a speaking engagement or engaging you as a strategist, give us the website and some info that they could reach out to.
Sure. So you can find me on Facebook at Monica D. Livingston, Instagram, Livingston3636. That's the number. You don't have to spell it out. So Livingston, the number 3, the number 6, the number 3, the number 6. And I'm going to be vulnerable here. I say I want to have dialogue with people. Here's my cell, 703-898-2754. And I'm highly responsive via email at mlivingston at 36nation.com. And you can also text me at that 703-898-2754. Dan, it's been amazing. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being vulnerable and willing to do this. This change only happens with people like my brother here, Dan, and I appreciate you and I love you.
All right. Love you too, Monica. And thanks again, folks. Be sure to check out my other podcast and blog at danclouser.com.